What's up, Fredonia? You're listening to the Local Lowdown on WCVF 88.9 The Voice and WDVL 89.5 The Inferno. I'm Olivia, I'm your co-host, and I'm your field interview lead.
Hello, I'm Elena. I'm your other co-host, A&R lead, and executive producer.
Hi, I'm Dylan, the production lead.
Awesome. Well, tonight's episode is brought to you by Fredonia Radio Systems in a group effort to promote and showcase the local talent in Fredonia, as well as Western New York at large. Welcome to the first music industry professional interview. This is the Local Lowdown.
On this episode, we have our guest, Silas Rubeck.
Hello, welcome.
Hi.
Can you introduce yourself and how you got your start in visual media?
Yeah. So I'm Silas Rubeck, or Sils the Schmuck on Instagram. My background preferably is JPEG, but also I got started doing music videos, particularly for the band Muddle, and then that spilled over into doing live visuals, which has kind of become my main focus, as well as video art and video manipulation and light art at large. Name, background, was that it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. That's my whole thing.
Nice.
Everything about me.
Well, you already kind of explained it, but your main form of art seems to be digital. But did you always have your start with digital media? Is that how your art form started, or did it evolve from a more traditional medium such as drawing, painting, anything like that?
Yeah, I was a big draw, doodle, sketchbook kid in high school. I mean, that was my whole thing was don't touch me, leave me alone. I'm gonna draw in my book. And then that evolved into a greater interest in animation. But I was at the height of when everybody wanted to do animation. That was a high schooler. So I was okay, maybe I'll do video editing. So I would shoot B-roll with my friend. And then that transitioned into just I want to do music videos. I want to do something like that because I would watch those online.
Nice.
And yeah, I feel like my art is always kind of seeking the next thing that I can learn and then trying to add it to my greater repertoire of interests. I mean, video has kind of become the thing that it all draws back to because it's a good way to communicate information, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you always have a close connection with music as well? And is that another aspect of how it evolved to music videos and such?
Yeah, I mean, I've always really enjoyed listening to music and been just a huge music fan. And then also I got the blessing of growing up with YouTube. So, I mean,
Fair.
music videos were super available. It was really easy to find stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was just kind of latent inside of me. Post MTV, but music videos were still a really predominant way of communicating an idea in the early 2000s and stuff, I feel like.
Nice.
Especially for artists, it was a good way to promote your status.
Yeah. And did you have any specific inspirations throughout that time that eventually got you into what you do now?
Probably. I mean, for what I do now, I think I'm just very inspired, unintentionally by the art of the 60s and 70s in particular. Early video art is super inspirational. And that's something I just sort of stumbled backwards into because I got really into video manipulation and originally I just was this will help me edit videos quicker. I can do all my colorizations and stuff and get transitions to work more fluidly. But it almost immediately was I'll just do it live because there's that organic element to all of it. But particular inspirations, I would have to say maybe I really for a while was really into the Brockhampton music videos.
Yes.
They're so stylized and stuff. I just loved that they would bring in specific art directors and have a really specific view or style for each one was always really interesting. But I also kind of I feel the more I started doing music videos, the less I started watching them. Because you don't want to be too inspired in that realm, especially because then you end up remaking something else. Even subconsciously, it can be really easy to do that. And also working with musicians, I always want the most out of their vision. Like, I see it as, like, I'm a tool that they could use to bring about a music video. So it's a lot of, like, coaxing that out of them, because, like, you'd think every musician would be, like, so excited to do a music video, but they're always like, yeah, whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a cool thing. We should do whatever you want. And I'm like, no, it's your song.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you
Right.
balance that with the artists?
I listen to the song a lot. Like, I really try to, I'm like, send me a MP3 file. I'm going to listen to this thing like 18 times. And, like, I'm going to figure out your vision even if you don't know it. And then also just, like, figuring out the best language for it. A lot of it is, like, people do have an idea. They're just, like, afraid to share it at first. And I think that if you can make them feel comfortable or, like, show them stuff that they don't like, and then they'll tell you that they don't like it and you can change it.
Yeah.
Or you show it to them and they like it, and then you didn't have to change anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just like being open to it being a conversation, I think, is really important, because artists love to express their feelings, but through their art, not with their words all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. You mentioned earlier that you had an interest in animation. Were there any particular shows you grew up watching that, like, inspired you?
I really love, like, old cartoons that, like 90s, 2000s cartoons that particularly got, like, one season and then were taken off the air or, like, didn't get renewed. Stuff like, Mission Hill is really good. This is, like, a random show that I'm a big fan of or would watch a lot as a kid. I just liked that idea because it felt like it was very earnest to, like, an artist pursuing something, communicating it as best they could.
Yeah.
And, like, there was an era where you could kind of do that on TV and, like, it would flop. But 10 years later, some YouTuber makes a video about, like, 10 shows that got canceled that you didn't even know were super good. Or, like, Duckman is a good example of, like, a cartoon that's blowing up online right now was blowing up online right now. I'm usually 3 months late to what's actually popular online.
Fair.
But it's something I've seen a lot of clips of in my algorithm. So it's interesting to see how those shows pop up. Also, like, Home Videos and Dr. Katz are big ones because they used squiggle vision, like, older animation style. That was, like, a software that made all the lines kind of move.
Oh, cool.
Which, like, the Ed, Edd n Eddy is a, like, more, like, culturally relevant example of a show that kind of had that, like, bounciness to it. I just loved anything that had that, like, where everything feels alive and kinetic. I think that's really cool style.
Yeah. Ed, Edd n Eddy is really good.
Yeah.
That's the one with the fence post with a face on it?
Yeah, Plank.
Yes, Plank.
Yeah.
You have a pretty distinct art style, as we've seen. You have a lot of color, glitch, and pixelation. How does this play into your photographic choices and subjects?
Ooh, that's a good question. I really like photography in general. I think, like whenever I see a really good photograph, especially one that's, like, untouched, just, like, a nice Canon film photograph, I do always have a part of my brain that's like, oh, I lost the plot. What am I doing? Because I do just love, like, clean composition or, like, good values and colors and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think I try to do that, but then the novelty is the glitched element where it's like, I have that on there, but I don't try to lead with it because I think it works way better as a flavor than as, like, the main thing I do is just, like, it looks bad.
Yeah.
It looks messed up. Because that can also, I mean, I've seen a bunch of people online that do that super well. I mean, like, the glitch community is so tight-knit that, like, you get into it and then all of a sudden you're following, like, a bunch of people and getting a bunch of followers of just, like, people that are all interested in the same very specific visual style. So, yeah, I think, I mean, just the colors you get from older technology, I think, lend themselves to better feelings.
Yeah.
So I like to play in that space a lot, too. With subjects, I think I just like to photograph people and, like, moments that feel very energized. And then hopefully with the added flavor of the glitch, it, like, brings about those feelings. Yeah. I did a shoot at the Erie County Fair, and there was this guy, like, on one of those surfboard things, but it shoots you in the air, like, with water.
Yeah.
And he was like holding an American flag and like jetting water over to the crowd.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was like, that's so American. That guy's American AF right now. Like,
Yeah.
he's so American. And it's just really interesting to like try and get those moments, I think, because I'm very interested in like the hyperness of culture right now. Everything is compressed through this like tube of intensity. Like musically, everything is hyper. We're so hit with so much information that I feel like it's fun to try and play with that overstimulation that everyone feels.
Yeah, I like your use of flavor.
Yes.
Having a flavor.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you work with people who you feel fit the specific vibe you curate through your work?
Yes, yeah, I think I'm pretty good at finding people that like enjoy the vision enough to let me cook.
Yeah.
But I also really do love like kind of trying to just work with anybody that wants to work with me. Yeah. But that also entails that they probably enjoy some element of it. Buffalo's just great at that, I think. I think Buffalo and like the greater Western New York area has a really like unified sense of what is cool. And like it kind of like you go to other cities and they look like cities. Like I was in Toronto and I was like, man, every person looks different and like they're doing their totally own thing. And everyone in Buffalo like doesn't look the same, but like is working off of a similar template. And I think that that's really interesting because it makes those artistic discussions like easier, like trash strata sort of things, working with old materials. I find myself doing that a lot, and then seeing a lot of people who do similar things with like collage, and everyone like it seems like gets their materials at the thrift store now. Like everyone that does art is like, yeah, I got half of this stuff from Goodwill or Amvets because it's cheap and available, and older stuff just has that antiquity that is really pushing artistic conversation right now.
Yeah.
I never thought about it that way, but that's super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I hang out with a lot of people who are like, their art focus specifically is around like trash and things. So it's something that's on my mind a lot. And then also like the best VHS tapes I've ever found were like ones that people were throwing out.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel the same about like CDs in like secondhand stores. I found like a Frank Sinatra CD.
Nice.
I just love that stuff. You
Yeah,
know?
that's a really interesting. I mean, yeah, that's super interesting because at a thrift store you're going to be getting CDs, but from a very specific sect of people who are buying CDs that are represses of like things that they listened to on vinyl. Which I mean, yeah, that's a super interesting space of audio. I mean, you're listening to like converted FLAC files or something. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, we haven't mentioned it yet, and we don't see it right now in this recording, but in the final video, you're going to see there's an extra camera, with an effect on it, kind of this flavor that you've been talking about. And you've done a lot of different photo shoots and stuff for bands, for shows, things like that with this. And I found out recently that it's all within your cameras already. Like you don't do any like specific editing to create that. How does this work in the camera, or do you want to explain that to people who might not?
Yeah,
know?
okay. I was excited because I was thinking this is my moment to have a very brief multimedia workshop.
Go for it.
It's the signal line for any video synthesis is it looks crazy, but it's always actually incredibly simple if you know like signal routing in general. So like even something like what we're doing here, we've got like mics that are going into something that's picking up that signal and then it's getting recorded. You listen to like live music and someone has a guitar that goes into their effect pedals and then goes into the amp to affect that signal before it's recorded and displayed. I'm basically doing the same thing where you have a camera, and then you have your effects pedals, and then you have your monitor or something that's projecting that image. So the signal starts out clean, and then once it's routed through those effects pedals, gets dirtier and gets messed up. You have things like frame buffering, which is how this effect is achieved, where you're keying out the lightest or darkest elements of a video, and then it'll hold whatever isn't being keyed out on the next frame. So you can start to mess with things like the saturation and the hue, and you get like movement and delay effects where each frame kind of starts to blend together, and it gets very like psychedelic, or I mean, that's always the grounding thing. I have so many doing this stuff, like older guys like 60, 70 will come and be like, yeah, man, you know, this really reminds me of being back in college. And I'm like, yeah, brother, you know it.
You got it.
You got to agree with those guys every time, or else they will try to convince you that what they're saying is right. I'd rather just agree with them. I mean, you know, sometimes I'm like, you know what? You seem cool. You seem all right. You took cool pictures. I was talking to some guys at a art opening like 2 nights ago, and I was displaying pieces that were very light oriented, and they were like, "This reminds me of the '60s, man." So yeah, but similarly, yeah, with this, it's just getting those signal flows and messing with things. Older video cameras, what's great is that you're really just sending like electricity through. There's not like decoding that has to happen. An AV cable is just getting an electricity signal, sending it through the copper to a VHS tape player. So if you can just like mess with that electricity a little bit, then it can have a lot of really interesting effects and things that really like when people don't understand it, it like totally melts their mind. There's at the AKG right now, they have a whole bunch of op art, which is like this kind of era, this kind of like interest of Moyer patterns and things that are like optical illusions and stuff. Pretty interesting. And I was there, and it felt like I was at a history class for my specific interests, which was because I would see something and I'd be like, I know exactly how they did that, but how did they do it in 1961?
Yeah.
How long does that process take to work the cameras to do that?
I mean, it can be pretty quick when you know what you're doing, but there is like definitely a learning curve. Like when I first got the piece that I'm using for this video, which is the first piece of video tech that I really got, which is the Wave Pool by Andre J. It was like a lot of like making my video look incomprehensible because I did not understand like the layout of all the buttons and sliders and stuff. And then now I'm interested in like the circuit bent space of things. And that's a lot of like opening something up, finding where the video chip is, messing with each individual pin so that you can find out like that's where the green setting is. And if you want to start to mess with that, you can, you know, do things to the green setting. So it's like simple in concept once you know the basic 3 like schools of thought for it, which would be like, I think, circuit bending, live video glitch, and then maybe like digital video synthesis. Each of those, I think, are a pillar that you can learn or you can build up, and then it'll teach you more about each thing individually. And then eventually you'll just say things like frame buffering and digital synthesis, and everyone kind of looks at you like, oh, yeah, man.
Do you have any specific not inspirations? Sorry, wrong question. Do you have any advice for any like up and coming photographers, whether they're interested in doing what you're doing in particular or just wanting to take photos in like their own music scene?
I'll say for people that want to do what I do in particular, first move 10 miles away. This is my territory.
This is your turf.
This is my turf. Just kidding. But if you want to learn what I'm doing, go on Etsy. You can find people that are making like video gear for like not always cheap, but usually affordable or achievable prices. Things that are like, you know, if you're interested in playing a guitar, you're going to spend maybe $600 on like a decent guitar. Yeah. It's a very similar space where you're working with stuff that's a lot of time like handmade, made to order electronics. So it's very specific. But then just start learning about it. I mean, there's even Andre J, again, the person who made this, he teaches a class of how to do video synthesis in OBS, which is a free to download video recording platform. And that was how, when I first got interested in this, I tried to emulate things in OBS because it's very good at just creating layered video effects, and you can monitor the screen that you have the video playing on, and then that's an easy way to get feedback. If you're interested in photographing people in your music scene, you have to talk to them. That's the worst part, and I hate to say it because I know people don't like interacting with each other for some reason. But like pro-social art is, I think, the most important thing that people need to focus on if they want to work in their communities and if they want to like work with art in particular, is like, it's really cool if you are isolated loner in a cabin who paints, and 30 years from now everyone sees you as the master of your work that you should have been recognized as, but you'll be sad the whole time.
Right.
And that seems so like lame. Who would want to do that? If you talk to people who you like the music of, there's a good chance like maybe they don't have a photographer, maybe they aren't even looking for something like that, or if they do, like, and maybe that photographer isn't free all the time. And if you go towards people that don't have huge followings, but you like their music, then you're just going to be building each other up. I mean, some of the coolest like moments for me is when I see someone use a picture I took as like their Instagram profile picture or something, because it just is, it spreads around and you feel that connection to people. And the more you can build that connection, like, even if you're not making the best art, you will have a community and you'll be making art with other people, and it will be better than anything that you make sitting alone in your room, probably. There's always the savants that make really cool stuff alone. But I think that those people are probably wishing that they had people to talk to that weren't on Discord.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very, very great advice. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
But switching over now, as well as doing photography, you've done a lot of visuals at different shows, I know in Buffalo, but also to shout out some of the Fredonia ones. I believe you did some visuals for even one of our local Lowdown shows a few years back now, I think. And then also a recent show at Creek House in Fredonia. What inspired some of these visuals, or what's your process when you are like asked to go to a show? How do you like pick these different visuals and such?
A lot of time, again, it's like taking the time to research the bands. If I'm put on a bill like last minute, then at least knowing the genre of music is kind of fun. But at the same time, one of my favorite times doing visuals, just like in terms of interesting overlap, was I played a bunch of Disney classic movies for punk bands. So I had like, I'm going to butcher their name, but Bethesda Quadrata, I think.
Oh, Bethesda Quadrata.
There we go. That was not as butchered as I was expecting hearing you say.
We've interviewed them. They have a little lowdown if you want to check it out.
Yeah, there you go. Shout out. But I played the 3 Lives of Thomasina over their set, which is just like a Disney movie about a cat that goes through a couple families. And it's always really funny when you do it for totally random reasons, but then inversely, I did visuals for a band where I played a Rugrats tape, and someone came up to me and was like, "Oh my God, you played this visuals for this song that's about childhood or whatever, and that was so genius. How did you think of that?" And then I stared blankly at them and was like, "I just wanted to watch the Rugrats." I don't know, man. So it's the beauty of it is like you are performing in your own space a little bit, and like I'll approach bands with like a bag full of VHS tapes and be like, "Pick your favorite one," and then they'll be like, "You don't have any movies that I watch." And I'll be like, "Okay,
you
that's
open
fair."
up your trench coat and it's
Yeah,
just
literally.
I did a thing recently where I had a trunk, like a literal ginormous trunk that I was opening with like a beautiful velvet interior. It was very, very classy.
Yes.
Are there any VHSs that you've been waiting to use? Like you just want a band to use one of them?
Yeah, I just got some old racing, like monster truck tapes, as well as one that's all like NASCAR wrecks and like explosions. But the tape is called "And They Walked Away 3." So I like the reassurance that you get to know that all of these people presumably walked away from the car wrecks car wrecks they were in.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, cool, they weren't too hurt. So I would love to use. I just got those like maybe 2 weeks ago. So
Nice.
I'm itching to use those ones for sure.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I have a list of different poster ideas for when we're like booking shows and such. And there's one on my list, and I don't care that I'm saying this in an interview where anyone can just take it. But one of my favorite ideas that I really want to use is a monster truck for a poster.
Yeah, that
Should
would be
line it
rad.
up.
Yes, yeah. I would love. Yeah, put together a show where I can play my monster.
Just monster truck theme.
tapes. Yeah, I just saw TTT do a show. Or TTTT do
There
a
you
show.
go.
Yeah.
Did a show where I saw they had monster trucks playing. I think it was in Ithaca. And the first thing I thought was like, who's doing VHS projector stuff?
I know,
And I was like,
right?
oh, they're in Ithaca. But I saw it was all monster truck footage, and I was like, they got to it before me. But at the same time, there's only so many things they made VHS tapes about.
Fair.
It was
That's
like
fair.
wrestling, white guy blows things up in a war or for the military or as a spy. Bill Murray or Steve Martin do something very funny. Nature videos. So maybe there's a couple of things, but
Yeah.
it's actually maybe like one of the most versatile physical medias, in my opinion, but no one's ready for that conversation.
I wanted to talk about your Creek House show that had Bite Handle, Diss Track, Dream House, Kiwi Grim, and Fentanyl.
Yes.
Did you have any specific inspirations for the visuals at that particular show?
I saw Femtanol was on the bill, and I was like, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to leverage all of my social clout to play visuals for this.
It was one simple DM, and we were like, please.
Exactly. I mean,
God.
That's how powerful I am. You know, it takes one DM. But yeah, no, it was really just something that I was really excited for. And then I was actually really unfamiliar with a lot of the bands because I found out it was a lot of their first sets or second sets, which I also like absolutely loved that because like there's a very fun conversation of like hearing a band's first track and then in the moment being like, okay, this is going to work and then we're going to do this. Sort of patching it together while it's happening is probably one of my favorite ways to do that. If I want to be really stressed out the whole time. If inversely, but yeah, I mean, I think that for that show in particular, I did a lot of focus on like colors and like delaying things, trying to get things in time with the music so that it feels like it's reactive. I mean, the cool thing about using audio reactive software is that it's going to monitor, levels and it's going to get like anything below this frequency will get this effect on top of it. But what's really fun about doing the audio reactive when it's me is that I have to react to the audio. And it can be really fun to dance with the artist in that way. I think I do my job perfectly when I see people that are surprised that there's not a computer doing it. They're like, wait, that's a person with a bunch of stuff?
Yeah.
Weird.
You're like a visual DJ.
Yeah. A VJ, yes.
Yes.
I mean, there is a term, and it is exactly that. But yeah, it is really fun to try. The visual DJ. I actually just recently started doing stuff with 2 VHS tapes, so I could do people dancing over nature footage or something, which has been really fun.
Yeah. I gotta say that Creek House show, it was one of my favorite shows ever in Fredonia, and the visuals added so much to it.
Yes.
It was
Thank you.
such a cool, I wish I was back there, honestly.
One of the best compliments I ever got was for the Main Street shows that I did, where someone said that they couldn't imagine a Main Street show without it being colorful, and that was because of the visuals I was doing just kind of filled that room with color. And I do love that it's that subliminal element of like, this band playing, and it's never like it would be boring to see a band play.
Right.
It's always cool. But I've also like had moments where I've seen like 2 people play a really awesome show, but they were in red light the whole time, and I'm like, these people it should be purple or green. Like we get on this. Do not. And I'll tell them after the show, I'm like, don't let people put you in red light when you play. Like unplug whatever light that is.
Yeah.
Because you guys are soft, and I feel like I'm in the bar in the SpongeBob movie where it's all that dim red lighting.
Yes.
It's perfect for a punk band, but not perfect for a soft acoustic thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to be in that realm of like knowing the subliminal effect that light can have a little bit more, and trying to play with that.
You once said on a post from Instagram, working with feedback loops always feels like having a conversation with yourself. Sometimes it can be really useful and impactful, and other times you just feel crazy. This quote is paired with some super cyber crunchy looking visuals on an old TV. Can you firstly give a brief explanation of what a feedback loop is in this context?
Yeah, so a feedback loop visually is like if I were to take my camera, plug it into the TV, and then point the camera at the TV so that the signal is kind of getting caught.
Yeah.
Very similar to like if you point a mirror at a mirror and it creates that infinite
Yeah.
effect. You're doing that and then adding delays and things. And since it is feedbacking, like those delays get caught and pulled back. And it creates a very fluid and like sustained effect, which I think can be really meditative, very powerful to just kind of like get caught in a real-time thing that is kind of outside of yourself, but like directly impacted by like every second of your action.
Where is that line between the conversation with yourself and then also making you feel crazy?
I mean, so it's you really are walking a line with it a lot of the times. I mean, it's super easy to bump your camera over like a quarter of an inch or a couple centimeters, and you lose this specific point where you're getting like a perfect spiral, and then all of a sudden it's just flashing imagery. And I mean, I see people who work exclusively with feedback loops where they'll have these really beautifully attuned like signal flows where you put a candle somewhere and then it's going to ripple outward with light from that space. And it's really cool to see how people work with that versus like when I work with the feedback loops, it really does feel like it's very isolated as well. I mean, you can do it with other people, but like to give them control of the feedback is to kind of like make it more of a conversation or to like relinquish that conversation to somebody else.
Yeah.
And I mean, also, I've just been working with them for such a long time that it does feel like working with video and with technology a lot, for me, is like an attempt at like building my nervous system outside of my body. So things like the camera and the effects start to really symbolize like my eyes and my brain, and then the monitor is like a outward display of communicating those thoughts. And I don't know if it's obvious from how much I'm yapping on the pod, but I'm very like hyperlexic. I like to really like speak through my thoughts, and it feels like that is like the most analogous version of how human thought patterns kind of work, at least in my mind, which is very like chaotic, very continual. Like it's hard to truly stay on a thought because we're just stuck in linear 3-dimensional time, so we have to keep moving forward in time. So it's interesting to try and like mirror those experiences with the video work.
Yeah.
It's super interesting to see it in like that visual form as well. But switching it over a little bit more now to the music scenes, which we've kind of been talking about here and there. We were just talking about how you have been taking a lot of photos. As of this recording, you have recently posted about the Guerrilla Showfair shows with the hardcore scenes. You've also mentioned Muddle. How do you feel that this kind of hardcore scene within the Buffalo scene goes along with your aesthetics, or do you feel that it strays at all, or what has drawn you towards that?
Before I was doing visuals, I was like just kind of a classic Buffalo punk. I was like going to shows, taking pictures on my Canon, very like straight down the lane, just like doing the punk thing. So I think that just gave me a lot of respect and interest for what people in that space do. And with the visuals, there is that chaotic craziness element. So if I want to, I can just turn up a couple knobs and lower things to just being completely real time, and you get strobing effects that are almost as fast as some of people's ability to blast beat, which is cool. And to try and I think it is that like dance that I was talking about earlier, where if it's someone doing something really melodic and really rhythmic, it can be fun to move things in a slow and sort of goopy way. And then if someone's doing something really angry and really aggressive, to make things just like sharp and to match that energy is always really fun. I think that I like human emotions like a lot, and especially on like a conceptual level, I think it's really interesting to empathize with people. And I think like that's a fun way that I get to play with empathy, is like trying to like line my soul and my interests with the performance that someone else is doing, and doing it without my physical body, like getting to hide behind a curtain and just do that is really fun.
Yeah. You really do build off of like whoever your subject is very well. And I wanted to touch on that a little bit more with your music videos. You recently directed All the Time I Wasted and multiple music videos with songs by Nick Mass.
Yes.
For 532 by Nick Mass, a lot seemed to go into it.
Masterwork.
With being in an apartment to running outdoors. How did you view the meaning of the music video to the song?
I mean, Nick has been a really great collaborator. It's been really interesting because he is the person who utilizes me the most. I mean, really is like able to see what I'm doing and then be like, okay, I want to use this and I want to use it in this way. Which is cool because, like I was saying, it's hard to find people who are directive in that way sometimes. And that video, I really think, was when our synergy was like absolutely at the height of its power, maybe, because now we're both more opinionated. So we'll actually be like, I think this should be this way. I think this should be this way, and then work from there. But that was a point where it was a lot more of like this back and forth of like, okay, we are going to film this day, and then I'm going to go away with the visuals for a little bit, and we'll bring it back to you, and then we'll work on the edit together, and then I'll go back and fine-tune everything. I was also less busy at the time, so I could do things in that sort of way. Yeah. It wasn't like, I'll find 45 minutes to, fix the edit.
Yeah. Right.
Because 2024 has just been like crazy busy for both of us. But that video in particular, 532, was like just like a perfect conversation and a perfect back and forth. And we both, I think, learned a lot doing that one. And it was one that I just watched it recently and I was like, wow, I love all the music videos I make because they're always fun to go back to and see. Because there's usually a kernel of something I'm doing now in it where I'm like, oh, I see what you're going for there. And I can do it better now.
That's got to be so cool to look back at. I think my favorite one is rice noodles. Do you have any particular like stories or anything about how that music video came to be?
So rice noodles is actually the one that is, I think, it's like Nick's, he described it as being kind of like his most emotionally connected song, like the song he put the most of himself into. So I ended up doing a lot of the bass edit, and then a lot of the effects and stuff on top of it are done by him, kind of in a more homage-y kind of way to old like YouTube videos he used to edit. So that one was like, I think, a good example of like the conversation getting a lot more in the weeds, but in a way that like the end product ended up being something that like we're both like heavily invested in. Yeah. That bass edit was something that I was like really proud of, and like the way that it all came together. And then at the same time, it was one where he was very focused on fast cuts and quicker edits, and I was really hitting this interest in like long shot content, which is not marketable and not something young people are interested in watching. And, I mean, like, visual information gets communicated so quickly now that with music videos in particular, it can be like a half of a second that a concept is communicated before they've moved on to the next concept. And I think that we were both working in different headspaces for that at the time. So the outcome is this very interesting combination of, like, longer shots to attempt to communicate this, like, base story with, like, a digital hyperization of, like, big faces and moving boils and things like that.
Yeah.
Then also with All the Time I Wasted by 100 Plus Club,
Yes,
which I definitely want to shout out.
100 Plus Club.
Yeah.
Shout out.
That I love that song. When we interviewed them, I even was talking about it for a while. But I love how, like, mellow it sounds, but it still has just, like, really great lyrics to it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was the process like directing that one in particular? And also, what was the timeline of that all? Because there was, like, in the music video itself, if you haven't seen it, it's them kind of on a beach, but it also is structured so that little videos pop up of, like, other certain, like, memories of, like, nature and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, so they reached out to me with a video that I had made for my Instagram, just like a little Instagram reel that I had posted, which did a lot of that, like, video in video stuff. And they were like, we're really interested in this effect. We really like the way this looks. And we'd been talking about doing a music video. So we had, like, a little meeting, talked about that. And then I think pretty much the whole thing got shot in, like, a day. We met at Went Beach, which is this little beach kind of outside of the Hamburg area, like, deeper in the South Towns. But I really like it because usually there's not a ton of people there. There's, like, this big house that is historical and old and pretty to look at. And yeah, we all got there, and then it was kind of just a couple hours, maybe like 3 or 4 hours of, like, I'll shoot this, sometimes shooting with the performance or the audio playing. A lot of times me kind of just, like, standing 20 feet outside of the group of people and shooting them because I mean, there's, like, a big discussion in photography of, like, the ethics of shooting people with or without them knowing. And I think that, obviously, like, we were in a setting where the whole thing is a shoot. So it's a different context in a pretty major way of, like, they know that we're here to film something.
Right.
But I still, like, in those settings, feel like I often get the best footage when people are not thinking about that they're being filmed. And that's just such a psychological thing of, like, someone knows they're being filmed and, like, every muscle stiffens up. Everything gets all tight. So I just really like to try and at least, like, create an environment where there's enough comfortability that, like, that isn't a problem. And I don't know, I think that it's diminishing sometimes when people are like, oh, you need to have this, like, specific setup and camera because then the person's gonna, like, able to, be the person they want to be. And it, like, to me, that diminishes, like, the person's ability to understand their own artistic value, like, outside of themselves. Like, people are smart. People know that when you take a picture or a video of them, that it'll probably be different than how they perceive themselves.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Right.
I mean, like, it's cool when, you're out with friends and you take a picture and you just be like, delete that. I don't look good. But, I feel like it's a different conversation when the goal is to make effective emotional art. Sometimes it's good to just, like, be like, hey, guys, I got to go to my car. Oh, look at you all aesthetically on the top of this hill here. I sure it would be a shame if I pressed record on my camera.
Yeah.
Yes. And then also I wanted to play with the All the Time I Wasted thing. I wanted it to feel more casual. Like, I wanted that vibe of, like, oh, they're just hanging out. They are wasting time in fiction, hopefully. So, like, trying to find those connections is always really good too.
So, the art exhibition you were part of over this past summer, Folding Suns, and quote, connects artists from the Western New York region with those from Puerto Rico and the American South. What was the collaborative aspect of the exhibition Folding Suns like, and how did you connect with other artists?
So that was, I got put on that through BICA, Buffalo Institute for Contemporary Art. Shout out BICA.
Shout out.
Literally everyone there. I could sit here and name all of you, and I want to, but also I would forget one or two names and be deeply embarrassed. So I'm just going to say shout out every single member of BICA School.
You know who you are.
You know
Yes.
who you are. Past members, future members. If it's 2034 and you are part of the large corporate conglomerate that will be BICA School, living on the compound, making art, this is for you. It was through BICA School. I was put onto it because I got a studio visit. They were looking for people to do this gallery show. I think I did the most collaboration just with my friend Chango, who is also on here for C4W2.
Yes. Yeah.
Just because we are we're very similarly minded. We were the only BICA School students that got put in the show. So there was this sense of we've got to prove ourselves amongst the more established artists. And then also I did get to use some of my TVs for other people's video art, got displayed on one of my monitors, which felt like having a daughter in a play. I would go and see the TV with someone else's video on it, and I'd be like, "You're reciting your lines so well."
So proud of you.
Yeah, there was a parental pride.
Absolutely.
I feel very familially about my electronics. My TVs are all of my daughters. My VHS tape players are all of my sons. My cords are baby formula, maybe.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
Diapers.
Yeah, just essential stuff.
Yeah.
Totally lost the plot of the question a little bit. What were we talking? Oh, the Folding Sons exhibit.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. It's got my kids, But it was really fun. It was really interesting. I did a piece that was all of these hanging windows with pieces of dichroic glass kind of glued in to recreate tarot cards as a new age cave painting was the way I described it, because the goal would be that the light would hit one of these windows and then sort of project an image of this very figural, collaged piece of glass. And then, I just liked the idea of these hologram, colorful cave images. I tapped the
You're
table.
good.
No, I'm out. This thing's getting trashed now.
We just emphasize it.
yeah,
it's
and you
just
zoom in, macro on
echoes.
the finger.
Don't give Dylan ideas.
You should do macros on the finger if people do that. I would laugh if I saw that. But yeah, that was, I don't know, it was a really cool exhibit. It was one of the first times that I've been shown, my art's been shown with other artists, especially people that do art professionally, which has been kind of crazy. This whole year has been a lot of getting taken seriously as an artist, which
As you should.
Honestly.
But is also incredibly scary.
Yeah, I could imagine.
It's awesome. And then I just had a exhibit open at Fitz Books and Waffles. That was all light art. It was a bunch of glass and flashlights and stuff, because I wanted to recreate my projection stuff, but normal, without any videos. And it was 2 days of just the most nervous I've ever been. And that was also really similar. I had done a play, and then I had a week to really focus on my piece for that exhibit. And it was just a crazy roundabout thing, having to try and finish that and chain all of these pictures together, because I'd spent a month just making compositions and trying to get it all out of my brain. But yeah, just a really fun experience in general. Yeah, I want to say Pablo is the name of the person who put that together. And if it's not his name, I will send you a recording of me saying the right name.
The right name, yes, please.
Plop it in.
And you can,
in case.
even as poorly as you want, just let people know I got it wrong. But I would like to correct that. But I'm pretty sure that was his name. And yeah, he was great. Like one of the most interesting like people that I've gotten to meet like through doing this art stuff and through Bika School. So it's just been a really cool, so interesting that I am uncertain if I'm saying his name right.
Yeah, no, you're good.
What is it like having your art, like having people view your art in a setting like that compared to at shows or online?
I mean, I felt the judgment more a little bit. Like, I definitely felt the, like, need to appeal to people's, like, ideal of what art is a lot more. Like, if I do a show and people don't get it, or people come up to me and are like, hey, can you give us more mic and monitor 3? And I'm like, that's not my job. It's a lot easier to kind of just be like, well, they don't understand the technology and they don't understand, like, what it is I'm doing, because lighting people are like always a very I don't want to say underutilized, but like people aren't thinking of the lighting guys all the time at shows.
Right.
Yeah. Which, when I do see someone perform like in a concert, I'm always scoping the booth for where the lighting guy is, and then I'm like, oh, you're running Resolume, I see.
So you did bring it up already, but we wanted to shout it out in particular. You just had an opening at Fitz Books and Waffles. What has that experience been like in particular? I know you kind of explained a little bit of it already, but what do you want to share for listeners to hear about?
So, yeah, I applied for the Generator Fund, which is through Bika School and the Andy Warhol Foundation. They provide funding for artists' projects. I had applied for a project that I was working on, or had conceptualized, called "And Light Meant God," and it's sort of my goal was to kind of create a discussion, hopefully, around like the way that we experience light and the way that light has become very inundated in our lives, despite being something that, like, if you go back far enough, was the only reason that we got to see, like, anything was because the sun came out or because, like, the moon was full. Other than that, it would just have been, like, pure darkness, no light pollution, just, like, a purely dark area. And then now we have, like, lights on our phones, and lights are, like, so readily available. And that was just, like, really eating away in my brain. So I ended up kind of, like, working on this idea of, like, using flashlights and glass and mirrors and water and things to, like, just remind people of the natural beauty that can kind of be brought about with lighting. Like, if it's a rainy night and the ground's all wet and a street light is illuminating a tree, and you get these, like, beautiful glittery patterns of leaves and things, like, intersecting each other. I just found that to be so enticing, and, like, I guess my goal was, like, to get people to see the art in that everyday element of life, where you just, like, reflections and things. And I ended up getting the funding for it, which was crazy.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was really the craziest email, because I was like, oh, I have to do this now.
Right.
Actually, and then that was almost a year ago. This is coming to a close this year. Me and Nick also have a project called Vague Questions that is ending this year, or concluding this year. It'll be at WNY in November. But similarly, Generator Fund project, I think they had to be finished by 2025. So it's just been really interesting, like, having a project that I worked on for so long that, like, changed the way I view the world. And now I have to, like, just hope that is communicable. Like, I didn't go crazy and make a bunch of nonsense and people are going to be like, I kind of get it, but it's just flashlights and glass bottles. That's the fear, but I think people will get it, hopefully.
Yeah.
I can incept some people's minds with Gothic architecture. I can pill them on that, maybe.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we are going to switch it over to our promotions head, which I want to shout out anyway, because she wrote a lot of these questions that we are reading today. So shout out to her already. But she does have a question for you as well.
And it may be the deepest question of this interview. Don't just I know it's a big ask, but okay. What is your favorite color?
Oh, wow. I mean, I might cry.
Yeah.
This is intense.
Yeah.
My favorite color. I love any, and this is maybe a cop-out because it's not one color, but anything that happens during a sunset looks awesome.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I mean, that orange to lavender sort of spectrum of color is always been something that is super powerful. Either that or Miami neon is also awesome. That blue, yellow, pink combination.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, very not fully saturated, almost pastel, but really brightly lit, fluorescent sign imagery.
Yes.
Those colors. I just saw something that was that Miami blue recently, and I was like, that's such a so 2010. It was also there's eras before that were also very inspired by those colors. But to me, any jewel tones or Miami fluorescence are peak. Anything that was the color of a gemstone on Webkins. That was awesome. I mean, I love, there's so many good colors, guys. It also, color is just refracted light at different angles. So, they're all the same, maybe.
It's all about that light.
Yeah.
It all comes back to light every time.
Are there any movies that you've watched where you particularly love the lighting or it just calls to you?
I just saw The Substance, which had awesome colors and super stylized. I also just watched Donkey Skin, which is a movie from 1970, maybe, which also had amazing, really interesting use of colors. And see if there's any others that I've seen recently, at least. I watched 2 movies last night. The colors were not interesting, though. They were just regular.
Yeah. I know one of mine is Taxi Driver. That
Totally.
one I feel is a classic. The night shots on those, so cool.
Absolutely. What's the... Oh, man. I'm really trying to remember the name of... There's a Nick Cage movie that I want to say is Martin Scorsese directed it, where he's an ambulance driver.
Oh.
And the colors in that are phenomenal. It's a really well shot movie. Would be cool if I could remember the name of it, but it ain't coming to me.
Well, if we
can look it
remember
up
the name of
after.
it. Right.
Yeah,
here.
exactly. I'll look it up on my letterbox later and tell you what it is.
There you go.
You have a
There you go.
letterbox too?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the best. I love... I don't rate any movie under 3 stars. Everything is 3 to 5 to me. Because I just love watching movies.
I've only rated one movie 1 star, and I honestly think I need to give it another chance because I was just I was watching it when I already had a bad day, and I was like, this is just making it worse. And it was the Poughkeepsie tapes. It's a found footage film.
Interesting.
And it was just
So it was an uplifting, a movie that made you feel good. If it's found footage, those movies always make you feel good.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Grizzly Man? I mean, come on, that's a feel-good movie.
Yeah.
All right. And next, we are switching it over to our technical director, Dylan, who has yet another question for you.
Yes. No, we're just full of questions in the booth today. We love it. As kind of an overarching question, what advice do you give for people that would like to get into digital art? Especially if they want to incorporate the art with their music, in the Western New York scene.
Oh, okay. That's a great question, actually. I think if you want to incorporate your art into your music, especially in Buffalo, you are already on such a good track for making things that people connect with, and also getting to do more with people. Because if you, digitally at least, if you're good at almost any digital art and able to present it online, 5 people are going to come up to you and ask you to do it for them because Buffalo and kind of Western New York in general is so DIY that developing those skills is almost essential. And at the very least, it will save you a bunch of money, which is also awesome.
Yes.
I think that pirate Adobe products. Or DaVinci Resolve is free, and I've heard is very good, but I graduated high school in 2018, so Adobe is the master suite to me forever. Yeah, I mean, it's good to learn any real photo. I think that don't get caught up in what your software is actually. Just don't get caught up in, like, what you're using. Just use something and, like, find a way to make it work for you. Mm-hmm. Because especially now, software has become so ubiquitous that if you can just, like, get really good at oil painting in MS Paint, if you can get really good at photo manipulation in GIMP, like, whatever it might be, if you can find a niche for it, like, there will be people who have emotional connections to those softwares or to, like, those styles, and you can make a niche for yourself in that. Something like using an older version of Photoshop is going to limit what you can do if you wanted to keep up with, like, industry standard. But, like, what is industry standard is only really effective if you want to make things in an industry. Mm-hmm. If you want to make things in Buffalo or in your local area, then having a style, I think, is, like, essential.
Is there any unexpected equipment that you've gotten that really has saved you time and time again? You're like, I didn't realize this would be this useful, but I use it all the time now.
Yeah, I have, I mean, for me personally, OBS, I've mentioned it a couple times, but it is, like, surprisingly universally good. I mean, a lot of people just associate it with streaming. And I think, honestly, the biggest thing you can do for yourself if you're working in digital art is to break the part of your brain that thinks things are just for one purpose. Mm-hmm. Anything, you can export multiple frames in Photoshop and make a stop motion animation if you wanted to do that. It would be more time consuming. It would be a hassle, but you could do that if you wanted to. Yeah. Similarly, OBS for me is not something I stream to, not something I record from, but it is, like, perfect or only slightly messy when converting VHS tapes, which I love to record on VHS tapes. So having an easier way to convert them. Before, I had a specific software that came with a specific converter, and it all worked decently well, but it was also just its own host of problems. It had to use a separate audio driver from the other audio drivers on my laptop. So if I opened the program and then I wanted to watch a YouTube video, the YouTube video sounded like a fax machine. So little things like that can get in your way. But, like, yeah, right now my process is, like, record on VHS, convert it in OBS, edit it in Premiere, re-record it onto a VHS tape. And so those finding little steps, especially if you want to do things that are complicated. Anything that can save time is great. Yeah. But yeah, for me, it would be, like, OBS probably.
Yes. Well, is there anything that we should be on the lookout from you in the future?
Vague Questions, like I said, is coming out in November. November 1st is actually our opening. It's going to be
awesome.
Duende is, like, this awesome spot in Silas City. They do a lot of shows there. Mm-hmm. They used to exhibit a lot of art upstairs, but they had to close for a little while to switch out employees, just, stuff like that. And then when they reopened, I was like, I don't think anyone knows that you can exhibit art here. And we needed a spot for Vague Questions, so we put that out November 1st. It's all interviews. If you like listening to interviews, you're listening to one right now. So it's all interviews that me and Nick did, where it starts off with 2 rounds of Rorschach tests, ink blot images, and then some live video manipulation that I do. And then we leave the room, we give the interviewee a slideshow and, like, a little clicker, and then they're able to, like, sort of autodidactically go through the interview, answer the questions in a private environment where it is all recorded, but there's no one interviewing them. Yeah. They're being interviewed by sort of a stack of 6 CRT televisions. And yeah, through that, people can sort of like be more comfortable, hopefully, in their interview or answer things more truthfully or without the sense of fear that they might be getting judged.
Yeah.
And that's been a really interesting project. And then after that, I have some new video gear that I've purchased recently that I should be getting soon-ish. And then I'm going to spend the winter honing those skills a little bit. And then I think 2025, I'm going to do a lot more live video. A lot more like I want to get back into making money. So I'm going to work, I'm going to do live shows for a year maybe. And I also want to curate some stuff with visual and musician artists. So if you are interested in maybe making some music or some art for me, let me know. Sils the Schmuck on Instagram, underscores and stuff.
There we go.
Well, that concludes another episode of the Local Lowdown. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you.
Yes, we've been wanting to have you for quite a while. I feel like interview after interview, we always mention your name, and we were just like, let's just do it.
Yeah,
so I'm so glad we could make it happen.
It's been very fun hearing my name get brought up on outside of context, and then I've been dying to get out here since that's happened. Yeah. So I'm glad that we can make that a thing.
Yes. And thank you for listening to the Local Lowdown on WCVF 88.9 The Voice and WDVL 89.5 The Inferno. We'll catch you next time. Same time.
Same place.
Bye.